Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today is Dr. John Weil, a political science professor at Middle Tennessee State University. We were talking about Bob Corker before we left. A pretty strong reaction, negative reaction to him getting back in the race. Marsha Blackburn's people said anybody who thinks that she can't win in November against Phil Bredesen is a sexist pig, and they shouldn't pay attention to the old men in Washington, the Senate leadership that's pushing Corker to get back in the race. That sounds like it could make for a pretty nasty primary if Corker does get in.
Well, it does, and of course, I guess she, you know, am I right? She probably has to, she's not able to run both for that and for the seat that she has.
She can't sit in her House seat. Well, there's people running for her House seat.
So, you know, she has, I mean, she's out on the line, and I can see how it would be pretty disquieting if you thought you had an open seat and next thing you know, it's not.
There's some speculation that in order for Corker to be successful, he'd have to somehow have a rapprochement with President Trump, maybe even get him to support him or come campaign for him. If we're talking about any other candidate or any other president than Donald Trump, could somebody make that kind of switcheroo and get away with it?
Well, again, in some ways, I think Corker, you know, particularly on this latest budget deal, he seems pretty much to have, you know, have joined the Trump side. So potentially, yes.
A long shadow's being cast over the Trump administration by the ongoing investigation about Russian interference in the in the 2016 election. Recent breaking news about that indicates there actually are Russian nationals being indicted about this. 16 of them. One with a connection here in Tennessee. That Russian
Tennessee
bot that seemed to be coming from the Tennessee GOP, which was not. But apparently the people involved in that have been indicted. Is that really what Bob Mueller is after, or is this just saying, well, look, this really is about going after interference in the election?
Well, I think the most interesting question is there any connection between them and anyone in, you know, in any of the campaigns?
And that's not clear yet at this point.
Certainly not to me.
If the Democrats do retake the House this fall, going into 2019, are we likely to see an increase in the tom-toms coming out of the House about impeachment? After all, that's where any effort to try to impeach a president has to start.
I think probably the key there again is what if anything more does Mueller uncover? At this point, you don't think what he's uncovered is impeachment would be premature? I think what you have is you have a genuine breakdown of what are considered to be presidential norms, you know, sort of established modes of presidential behavior. But I'm not sure at this point, I mean, that we have a violation. You know, do we have any high crimes and misdemeanors? Do we have bribery or treason? You know, they're the causes for impeachment, and despite our over-eager Californian who's started impeachment pretty much the day after Trump became president, I don't think we're there yet.
Another big spat, almost war going on in Washington is between the national security agencies and this White House, this presidency. Yes. We had this most recent thing going on in the House, a spat between dueling memos about how the FBI has been doing their job in starting what became the Mueller investigation. Should we be concerned when you have our security agencies and our president at odds with each other? Is that a danger for national security?
Well, you know, there have been periods, it's not exactly parallel, but there, you know, during the McCarthy era, there were a lot of people in the State Department who, you know, got pushed out or just left out of complete aggravation. And I guess there is some concern that the seeming lack of respect for members of the FBI and the State Department and others might be hollowing out, you know, and this is on top of apparently still a good number of positions remaining unfilled, you know, a year into the Trump presidency.
Another issue that may be emerging in the second year of the Trump administration is what to do about trade. This sort of echoes back into the 19th century, which was when trade was a huge issue in this country, very, very divisive. The president's already done a couple of things to raise tariffs. They're assuming there could be more coming pretty soon. Is that going to be one of the big issues? And do people really understand it? Because trade's not like it was in the 1800s. It was a huge deal, but people
will understand it if apparently, and I believe it was the Reince Priebus information in this new book, was that at one point Trump was considering, apparently came pretty close to a policy that would have raised imports like $2,500 a piece on cars, I think that's something, you know,
that would get people's attention.
You know, if we're expected to be excited about $50 a month in our paycheck from tax returns, I think they'd notice $2,500.
What about pulling out of NAFTA? That's what the president vowed often on the campaign trail. Now he seems to be hesitating.
He does, and you know, you have something similar in Iran. It's not a trade deal, but you know, Trump often seems to sort of enjoy criticizing a policy and substituting the criticism for a replacement.
His job approval numbers went up after his recent State of the Union speech,
right,
but he doesn't seem to be able to get much beyond his base, which is anywhere between 35 and 38% of the vote.
He doesn't seem to be trying.
Should he try if he wants to stay for a second term?
Under conventional wisdom, yes.
Or does it depend on where that is and in what electoral states it happens to fall in?
Well, that's certainly part of it, and I will say it was interesting. I still meet people who say, well, you know, Trump hadn't lived up to expectations, but they still think he was better than Hillary Clinton would have been.
Dr. John Vial, Middle Tennessee State University, thank you so much for being on the show for a very interesting, fascinating discussion. And thank you for joining us this week on Inside Politics. Hope you can be back here again for a future show. If you can't get into politics in the meantime, go to the News Channel 5 website. You'll find my Capitol View commentary there. There's a new commentary posted every Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you back here next time. Goodbye.